Warning, this is not a podcast for those who have got it together. We are men seeking answers to the questions that have plagued our mind. Can we be undefeated?
All right, welcome to our podcast, Positively Undefeated. I'm Burl Stricker, and I'm here with Emily Tuck. How are you?
I'm well.
Good. You looked at me strange. What did I do wrong? Just kidding. So a couple of things, we want to announce that we would love for you guys to connect with us through our website. It's called evenoneless.com. Again, it's a work in progress, but I think you've done a great job with it. So,
thanks. Well, that's good. A lot to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good way to connect to us. Also, following this podcast, Positively Undefeated, on whatever podcasting platform that you guys follow. If you have Apple, it's on the Apple podcast. If you can find it through Spotify. You can also find it through Google Podcast. I think there's like 8 or 9 different ways to find it.
I watch it on YouTube. I listen on YouTube.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. I didn't even know you could do that.
But yeah.
There's a way to do it. But following us, that helps. Reviewing us, that's great. Sharing it with your friends, that's wonderful too. And I wanted to announce that on September 16th, again, we are having a mixer. It's like an introduction event to our not-for-profit. This is one of the ways that we really get our voice out there is through this podcast, but we're going to have this mixer on September 16th. I think it's going to be fun. We're going to have food. We're going to have music.
Good music.
Yes. And we're going to have kind of a fun auction and really just kind of getting to know the organization and hearing stories and those type of things. So very excited. It's here in Elk City, Oklahoma. It's at United Country Realty and Exploration Realty, which is downtown 105 South Main, at 6 o'clock. If you are in our area, we'd love to have you. Elk City, Oklahoma, September 16th, 6 p.m.
I'm excited.
So Emily, what's your title? You have a little title. What's your title?
Community manager.
I like it. Well, and man, I want to say it like publicly. I think you've done an amazing job. And I couldn't figure out before you what I was needing or what we were needing. And really, you answered it. And the answer was somebody who cared about it as much as I do. And so I appreciate that very much. And I mean it because it's not that people don't care about suicide awareness and suicide or mental health, but it's just that some people care about it more because it's affected their lives more. You know what I mean? And I've said this several times that I have friends that literally, when I talk about feeling suicidal in the past, they don't have a clue what I'm talking about. They've never experienced that.
Right.
And so I think it's like, let's say you never struggle with alcohol addiction or drug addiction or like certain mental health issues, it's hard for people to relate to that if they've never struggled with it.
It is hard. And it's easy for people to feel alien, like an alien or very alone when they aren't able to find that connection with somebody who has experienced something even similar to what they've been through. And so my purpose and my passion in my life purpose, meaning above whatever else I'm doing, it is this purpose. And, that is to build a community, and make connections with others who feel alone or who feel alienated. Mm-hmm. So it is a purpose above all. And the mission is, that connection. Mm-hmm. That connection is key. I remember what it felt like to be alien.
Yeah.
And it's really relieving to realize that, we're different from each other, but we're really not that different. We're really not that alien. So community is key.
I think that another thing, and by the way, I'm going to try to go live on TikTok. I kind of forgot about it.
Oh, yeah.
Another thought about that is that, and you've heard me say it, you may not experience those things, but it's highly likely that if you don't experience somebody that is close to you, family, kids, friends, have experienced it or will experience it. And I think that if you've never experienced that, any of that, and then all of a sudden one of your kids goes through something like that as an example, then it completely changes your perspective, because you're like, yeah, I may not, but my kid is, and that's a big deal, or somebody very close, a friend, and so, it's kind of, I think we all struggle with things. It's just a matter of time. It's like what time period is going on in your life. It may have been somebody passed away that's very close to you, or it might have been, no telling what kind of trauma or tragedy has happened in your life, but
no one's really immune from it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm.
Yes, no one's immune from it. And at some point in time, I think we've all will have or have dipped into some sort of trauma.
Yeah.
And learning the definition, or how I understand the definition of trauma, not PTSD, which I heard Ashley Jarvis on one episode giving the definition for PTSD, and I thought it was really insightful. But trauma itself was explained to me that it's any experience that is less than nourishing.
Yeah.
So if you look at all the experiences that we have, and the ones that are less than nourishing, they impact our nervous system in a different way, right, than the ones that are nourishing. They impact our belief systems in a different way. They can get into a healthy an unhealthy, disconnective type of mindset, so that's why the word trauma is there, because if it is less than nourishing, it does impact us. We can be and build resiliency when we encounter those less than nourishing moments, so that it doesn't stick with us in our nervous system, stick with us in our mindsets and our belief systems, with the right training, with the right conditioning, and the right perceptions and understandings and stuff.
Yeah. I like that. What's funny is I meant to mention this to you as I'm doing the training for the neurofeedback.
Yeah.
There's two things, and I can't think of the second one right now offhand, but one thing that is a staple for that neurofeedback training and that program is that it builds resilience, and it talks about it throughout the training the entire time. And I love that, because it's exactly what we've been talking about, is we want to help people build resilience in areas of mental health, physically, mentally, spiritually. And, I'm thinking about it's you can't falsely create those things. They have to, resilience comes through experience. It comes through time, but we can offer opportunities for people to build that resilience through something like neurofeedback, and so through, just everyday stuff,
Yes.
And, I think that I love that is part of the program, is building resilience. And if you guys haven't heard of neurofeedback, it's something that we're doing training on. We're really working toward getting the equipment for it. There's not a lot of places that do it, but look it up. It's a great, it's a great way. It's just a tool. It's one of those tools that you can use to help train your brain to be, again, more resilient and also more focused and all those things. All right. So today we're going to talk about different subjects, and I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah.
So what we pulled was meditation. Okay. So
we got a cool bucket of sticks here.
Yes. So
random conversations.
Yes. Random conversations. So what is your thoughts on meditation?
Well, the first thought that I had when I saw meditation was, wow, how many varieties and different ways you can meditate and use meditation in your self-care regimen, in your daily life. I've learned sitting meditation, walking meditation. I've learned a meditation to still the mind. I've learned meditations to focus on particular messages, usually typically spiritual messages, to meditate on that throughout the day. So that's 4 different kinds of, meditations that I can pull out of the toolkit at any time. Some people practice meditation just staring into a flame. Presence is the main thing that I get the main fruit I get from meditation is presence.
Yeah. Being present at that moment.
Yes.
Do you think mindfulness is different than meditation?
Not really.
Because you hear that term used a lot when it comes to meditation, is mindfulness.
Yeah, I think they're really the same, because a lot of people think of meditation as just completely emptying the mind. That's what meditation is, and only is we're going to sit here and not have any thoughts in our mind. But the way I learned meditation from different Zen Buddhist monks and even Christian monks and different practitioners was it's to have an awareness of what's going on with myself internally and what's going on externally simultaneously in any given present moment.
Yeah.
So my mind is not actually empty. It's filled with observations. I'm noticing things. I'm not necessarily having an opinion or judging anything I like or don't like that. I'm noticing things. I'm noticing the color. I'm noticing how things feel on my skin. I'm noticing how my nervous system feels. I'm noticing what parts of my body I'm using at the moment. And I'm just kind of going into observational mode. It's kind of the way that I look at it. And so when I'm out of kind of my thinking or attaching thoughts to my present state of being, then I'm staying out of kind of future surfing, because I could get into future surfing with things, or maybe I'm reminded of something of the past, I can stay out of those things when I'm in just an observing mode and meditative state or mindful state, either way.
Yeah, when I think about meditation, I've heard different thoughts. I've heard the idea that like praying is talking to God. When you're talking about the spiritual aspect of like God, that praying is talking to God, meditation is more like the listening to God. I like that. I think that, I feel like that I've struggled with talking and not listening, and you've heard the deal, like, that's why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, I think I don't feel like that I've listened to God enough, that it's like, I'm telling him what I want. I'm telling him, what's going on in my life. And, I've really struggled with the aspect of prayer in the past, because it's like, he already knows what's going on. And, it's not like God's a vending machine and you're going to put in some prayers and all of a sudden he's going to change his mind. And I think that a lot of times you hear prayer kind of explained like that. Like, if we get a bunch of people
put
together,
in your request.
We know how important, like, I really strongly believe prayer is important. The Bible makes it clear that it's important.
Yeah.
But on the same point, I don't believe God's a vending machine where we put in a bunch of prayers and he spits out what we are, if we get more prayers, more people, then he's going to, honor our request because it's more. I think that, part of that is, I recently really thought about, I read a devotional that talked about that you have to be real careful praying for yourself. Like, let's say you're praying for a situation that you're going through. We have a tendency to really put our own will in that.
Absolutely.
Because we want something, and it sounds super selfish, but it's just normal, I think, where you're like, this is important to me. I really would want this to go this way.
I think this is what I need for life to be good, for life to be just well. God, I need this.
And what it was talking about, the reason that it was saying be very careful, because we have a tendency to put our will into something, especially when we really are worried about it or really care about it. And then we get it confused with, like, quote, God's will. You know what I mean? And I can relate to that, because I think that, it's so easy to get it confused. Like, is this what I want? This is what God wants?
Oh, yeah.
But when I think about meditation, I like the way you say it too. It's like the way that I approach meditation, a lot of times I'm walking in the morning and my goal number one is to pray for other people. Like, that's what I've set my goal is. It's not for myself, but pray for other people. And then when I think about after that, then I'm like, what I believe is meditation for me. And it's really kind of what you're saying is like, I'll be just sitting, walking, and these thoughts maybe about the past will come in, and it's me pushing those away and try not to dwell on the past. Or a thought about today, in other words, the future, which may be, after this walk or what I've got scheduled or what I've got going on. And it's the same concept to me, is like pushing that away.
Mm-hmm.
I like how that, I think you said it, but I also like how I've heard it say is like acknowledge it.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I've got stuff to do today.
The acknowledgement is important.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I got stuff to do today. But pushing away and not dwelling on it.
Yeah. Now is not the time to connect with this, but I'm aware and I acknowledge that this thought has come up.
And then kind of what you said, like being present, that's so hard in like today's time. Like one of my rules on this walk, is not to like play music, not to be on my phone.
Right.
And it's because it's so easy for me to get caught up in the same thing, that I would do all day long, maybe, which is talking to people on the phone about this and that, or looking on social media, or, listening to music, which I love music, but I am trying to designate this time to pray, but also to hear what God has to say.
All right.
And so when I think about that meditation, it's like really trying to be present. And so I can hear if God has something to say,
I think that's what spurred me into learning the practice and training in meditation is because I wanted that connection and that personal relationship with God. But just there was this knowing in me that knew that I was not in the right space for that because I was always worried, anxious about the future or depressed about the past. And, and I had this just sense that God was trying to communicate, but I wasn't in the space to even be reached out to. I wouldn't have heard it if he would have been yelling loud and clear. I would have been so zoned into the future or the past that it would have just, I would have walked right past it. I'm sure I did so many times.
There's so many, like, whether you're talking about the Bible or whether you're talking about, just good common sense. Poems talk about it, groups like AA and NA talk about really being present and living one day at a time.
One moment at a time sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what you need. You have to just try to live in the moment, and it's so difficult for us with all that's going on. And so we either living this guilt, like I'm feeling guilty, or I'm just concentrating on the past and what's happened, or maybe even resentful about things that have happened in the past. And they say like resentment is like a killer.
Oh, yeah. I've experienced resentment.
Yeah.
Yes.
You may be living in this guilt or living in this resentment, or you may be constantly just thinking about the future. And there is some hope in the future, yes, but it's like, you can get caught up in like, almost like this is like you're planning it out the future and, you're not even living in today because you're worried about the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, that whole point of being present, I think relationships we know that being present in a relationship, whether it's talking about your kid or a spouse or whatever, that being present is like super important. But I think that same concept goes with God. It's like being present with that relationship. I do want to say this, and I don't know if you felt like this, but I felt like that some in the past that whole meditation thing was very mystical, like weird. It just the way I'd heard about it and just people described it, it just seems weird to me, at one point.
Yeah.
And I think that like for me, I almost had to do some of this stuff mechanically. Like fake it till you make it kind of stuff. I know people don't love that.
Yes. Well, I had to immerse in, I went and lived at the Osage Forest of Peace. It's an awesome place. If you're not even from Oklahoma, to check it out because it's one of only 2 spiritual retreat centers in the whole world where both Christians, Catholics, and Buddhists meditate and pray together. And they house all kinds of different retreats there. Several different people from across the United States come in throughout the year. You can rent a cabin, go on hiking trails. They've got a real extensive library. You can check out books. But it's in the middle of some Osage land that was donated to some sisters from a Catholic church in Arkansas. They They set up their monastery there. But I had to immerse in this practice 3 times a day. You know, part of the routine, I worked there and I lived there in a cabin. And we did the community thing every day. So first thing in the morning, we would have sunrise meditation. We would read an inspiring word. Whoever was hosting it, you know, picked out an inspiring spiritual word for the day. And then we would meditate for 20 minutes. And we did this after lunch and right after dinner as well. So anybody could drop in from the community if you were staying there as a guest or if you live close by. You know, at any given time, someone would come in and join us for meditation. And so when I first started, it was just like, am I supposed to be clear in the head? Because I'm thinking about all kinds of things right now. And I was a little clumsy with it, you know, and so I got discouraged and thinking I'm not meditating right or doing it right. But it was more about just being still and learning to be present. And so that practice took some time, but like after 3 weeks of just doing it mechanically, just showing up, sitting down, that whole full 20-minute timer, whether I could get to a place where I felt present or not, I did it.
Yeah.
And so after a few weeks, I actually experienced like maybe 2.5 minutes of presence. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of work I was thinking for that 2 minutes, but I just stuck with it and just stuck with it mechanically. Then I saw breakthroughs other areas. You know, it was like, now I'm present in other activities. I noticed when I'm eating my meal, this was huge. When I would eat, I'm somewhere in the future or I'm somewhere in the past thinking about a conversation. It could be just a random conversation, but I was always in the future or the past. So I wouldn't enjoy my meals the way that I could have, you know, and it was just kind of a routine thing. But I noticed, hey, I'm actually present during my meal. I'm paying attention to the food I'm eating. I'm more engaged with how it tastes. I'm thinking more about, I wonder, you know, what ingredients are the chef used in this meal today. I'm more present with that meal. I'm more present with the people I'm sitting at the table with. There's a want for me to get to know them better and ask about, you know, things in their lives. Little things like brushing my teeth, washing my hands, you know, those are things we just kind of habitually do during the day. And our mind's already thinking about what we got to do 30 minutes from now, or it's thinking about what we might have forgotten from yesterday. But those little moments of just brushing my teeth, washing my hands, I was completely present in those moments. And I'm thinking about the water, you know, I'm thinking about how grateful I am. I'm cultivating gratitude for these simple little things. Gratitude for having a toothbrush and toothpaste, gratitude for having healthy teeth, you know, and these are the things I'm connecting with and the actual activities I'm doing, being present with these little activities. So just those basic eating, breathing, I started noticing at any given moment, connecting with my breath, noticing I'm breathing in, I'm exhaling. I was able to notice when I was holding my breath or breathing shallow. I was able to notice what thoughts were going on that was dysregulating my breathing. So much awareness happened from, you know, that 4 months of just getting back to the basics and learning to be present in the basics in life.
That's great. You know, it's funny, you remind me of something because I don't know if I told you about this, but at one point I read just same thing. I'd read something about someone like naming like 100 things they were thankful for, you know? And so I know from experience that like that's tough. And so it started out with, of course, I'm thankful for my family and I'm thankful for my job or whatever. And then it goes, as you're trying to think of more, it goes to things like, I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful that I can, you know, physically am, you know, able to walk. I'm physically, you know, mentally, you know, there. I'm all these things. It starts going to those type of things, right? And so I tried that on, you know, one morning on the walk, just the entire time naming the things that I was thankful for or grateful for. And you're talking about for 45 minutes, because that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like walking or
You've got to dig
walking.
deep for that long.
Yeah. And I don't know the exact word, but ultimately you got to dig deep.
Yeah.
And you got to find like the simplest things that I can see, that I can hear, that I'm hearing the birds chirp, I'm hearing the deer, and I'm seeing the deer, and I'm seeing, turkey as I'm walking. And I think that, for me, it caused me to be present, because I was thinking, what am I thankful for right now? And then it was a practice that you hear a lot of people say, like make a gratitude list or those things. And I've been told that. I was told that by a friend of mine. It's like, because, one time I was like very upset about something, and he was like, man, make a list of things you're thankful for, put it in your wallet. And when these things happen, pull it out.
Right.
And it almost sounded like silly to me, It's like kind of a roll my eye moment. Like, okay, whatever.
It's way too simple.
I could see as I'm walking, it's like I can make prayer complicated. I can make meditation complicated. I can, if you take all the information out there in the world about prayer and about meditation, it can become overwhelming.
Sure.
And instead, if I'm just naming the things that I'm thankful for,
that's a prayer right there.
It is. It's a prayer. And then it's also the meditation, because you're thinking about what else am I thankful for? And it causes you to be present.
It does.
And, man, you can't help but feel better after that.
There's there's a change that happens, and there's a physiological change that happens. And some scientists, some students, and I think a couple of professors at Harvard, they did this study, and they found that the most prominent physiological changes that happened when it came to gratitude were also about us thinking about being grateful not only for something, but for something that impacts another person's life. So, for instance, I could be grateful for something I'm often grateful for, I guess, is connection and community. If I just need a go-to of like, what am I grateful for right now today? It's usually going to be, I'm so thankful for the connections that I have in my life, for the community that I have in my life. But if I want to take that even one step further, I can say I'm grateful that my connection, my ability to connect with somebody also can help someone else learn how to connect, right? And so it's like we can kind of see this domino effect of when I'm grateful for just these simple things or these values that I have right now or these values that I'm connecting with, I can also see where someone else can be impacted by my gratitude, by me just being in this state of gratitude. Someone else might say, oh yeah, I could look at this in a light of thankfulness too. And so when someone else is involved and their well-being's involved and gratitude's involved, and that might not even ever be a real scenario, but if we just kind of touch on that in our minds and think of that, hey, our own well-being and what we're thankful for, everything could also impact somebody else. It really makes a strong physiological change in our neurological pathways. It really changes that biology in us, like if we were taking a prescription medication type level.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, good. Let me pull another item out. So I pulled out was selfishness.
Oh, cool. That's an interesting topic.
Selfishness. Oh, man. My thoughts on selfishness. I don't know. When I look at my life and I think about things, I can see so many areas that I was so selfish, and I was just thinking about myself. And if you would have asked me, let's say a year ago, are you selfish? I'm like, no, because I worked in healthcare for 24 years, constantly taking care of people. I was talking to a group of guys recently, and none of them had ever worked in a field like healthcare. They maybe worked in the oil field or wherever, where you don't really, quote, help people. You're not out there like taking care of people. But when I looked at my career, that's all I've done my entire career. I've helped people, you know? So it's easy for me to think that I have not been selfish because I'm like, oh, I'm always thinking about other people. I'm always, you know, but then when I started digging deeper, then I started seeing, man, I was making little decisions really based on, number one, like what I wanted, what I thought, it's almost like, going back to that, like my will, it's like I thought I could do it on my own. I didn't need, when it came to like finances, career, certain things, oh, I can do those things. I don't need God. I didn't say it like that, but that's kind of how I'm looking back. It's like I can handle the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll let God handle the big things,
Right.
And not really also in a lot of decisions, like the people closest to me, I wasn't thinking about their needs above mine. I was thinking about kind of my needs,
Yeah.
But it was a big transformation because again, because of the career that I was in, and I'm still in that healthcare type career, it was easy for me to say, man, I've just been helping people my whole life and not really realizing the selfishness was there. And, I struggle with drinking and struggle with many different areas. And those times for sure, I was selfish. I was thinking about me and my needs and not thinking about other people. In every relationship, it's like, you have the choice of you think about yourself first or you think about that person and maybe what their needs are. And I think that, at times it was so ingrained in me that I didn't recognize it, that I was thinking about my needs, my wants, and not thinking about other people's needs and wants. And I think the key, and also we're talking about prayer. I think that in prayer, that can be absolutely the same thing where unintentionally, you are praying for your situation. You're praying for your needs. You're praying for this circumstance.
Oh, yeah.
And just the entire prayer could be that. And one of the things like this is about a year and a half ago. I read it in this book, and it says, don't pray for yourself at all. Pray for other people. Such a simple line.
Yeah.
But I took it to heart. And so I would say for the most part, for a year and a half, that's all I've been doing is praying for other people.
I think when I started out in my prayer, that's how it started out, was praying for other people. In fact, it wasn't probably until over a year into it that I realized I really did have a need to start praying for myself and thinking about how that might be the most effective to work with God in that area. Because I think I was making a lot of demands on God. I was begging God to, in this selfishness, I was praying for this specific relationship to work out, and I think it was God's will for that relationship to have space so that God knew we needed space to heal, but I was on my knees so much in prayer, praying for this relationship to work out. And then someone brought it to my attention. Well, maybe you're praying for the wrong thing. And I realized, well, what I'm praying for is my own will.
Yeah.
This is what I want. This is what I think is ideal.
Yeah.
But God's will was way cooler. And it was way more profound and productive in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I go back to what I was saying earlier is that, it really, let's say the first step for me was like a year and a half ago. Okay, just pray for other people. Okay. So that was step one.
Yeah.
And then step two, and it took like a year and a half later, is that I told you again, I read it in a devotional, and it said the reason you have to be very careful praying for your own needs and wants and all that stuff is because you want to put your will into it.
That's right.
Because you feel so strongly about it, right? And then you end up thinking what you want is what God wants.
Yeah.
I think about like my kids, for example. It's like, of course, I'm going to pray, hey, I pray for this and this and this about my kids, but maybe that's not God's will. And so I'm putting my will into that situation.
Yeah.
And so part of it is like stepping back and really, you've heard it and, talking about not my will, but yours be done.
Yeah.
But that's really an important step, because if not, like I, for a long time, was super discouraged or disappointed in God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And it's because, man, I'm a Christian. I'm praying for these things. It's not happening. God's not either he's not listening or he don't care.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But realizing now it's because I was putting my will into it.
Yeah.
It's like what I wanted. And, it hit me like a ton of bricks, again, not that long ago, where I'm like, who cares about my kids more than I do? Does God care about them more than I do? And that's a crazy statement. Is that, does God care more about my kids than I do? And the answer is he does.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very hard to swallow, because you almost like think in your mind, I care about my kids more than anybody. So when I'm praying, I'm really got their best interest at heart. But there's a big assumption there that we wouldn't say, and that's that God doesn't care about them more than we do. And I believe he does.
That's a really excellent perception. Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's like, okay, if he cares about them more than I do, then literally he's going to have their best interest at heart.
It's a little easier to give your children up. I think that was in my daily reading this morning. I read from Jesus Calling in the mornings, a few different readings I read from, but I love Jesus Calling. And the message, I believe, this morning was how important it is to give your loved ones up into the care of God, to trust God with your loved ones.
Yeah.
And so that can take away the burden of expectations that we unintentionally, I think, unawareingly, so easily can put on our children, those expectations. And when our will gets caught up, in prayer for them. So that trust, I think that awareness that God does care about your kids more than yourself would need to happen, to know that you can trust God. Mm-hmm. You can trust God with your loved ones. We don't have to hold on to in a self-centered way. It is selfish, I think, to care about others and to want their best interests. But I learned personally that with your loved ones, that might look like, or it always looks like, letting go of your will and trusting that God knows best what this person needs to know love. And I think that love is important. Whenever I pray for myself, I found that there was power and my prayers were answered with this formula. Mm-hmm. Lord, I pray for this thing for me to help me learn how to be loving, to help me how to love someone better, whether it's removing a defect, whether it's praying for some discernment, some guidance, praying for patience, praying for tolerance, whatever these things are. I'm always praying for these things so that I may, love another person better. When I was praying for my car to keep running, which is a material thing. And so I don't feel comfortable praying for anything material really, but in my car, this situation, I was like, just one more day, God, so I could get to this person or that person. And I told everybody my car, I think, runs on prayers. Yeah. It just runs on prayers. So I pray for every little thing now, in every moment and every daily thing. Whether I'm getting on the road to drive, I pray for what's ahead of me. I pray for conversations I know that are coming ahead of me. Before I used to just ruminate and think about that conversation that was going to be had, right? And try to plan it out in my mind, prepare for it. That's kind of stressful. And so now I just give it up to God and I say, okay, Holy Spirit, go ahead of me and lead me in the conversation I'm going to have. And then it's out of my mind. It's that easy. Yeah.
Taylor, you want to hold this phone for a minute? This is Taylor. Now, I think you'll be better than me holding it. So any other thoughts on selfishness?
Selfishness. Well,
you said no, I want to.
I think that it's getting easier to recognize the areas I've been selfish And a lot of that was through self-pity. My needs are greater than yours, kind of what you're saying. You know, my needs are greater than my pain's more important than your pain, all of those things that I was caught up in. And so I think as we mature spiritually, it's easier to discern, you know, the areas we are being selfish in. So I'm not completely free of selfishness, but I'm really grateful that I'm aware to catch those areas. And then I can even make amends to a person and say, hey, I think I was, you know, a little more focused on me than you in that conversation, you know, and I apologize for that. And so,
I think you bring up something that's like a really big deal, and that's like the self-pity. I didn't realize that I was really living in that for a while.
Oh, yeah. I was a big party thrower.
You know, your prayer, like we're talking about praying, well, you can, looking back, it's like really self-pity, you know.
Why me, God? Why?
Yeah. And so, but in other circumstances too, not just prayer, but it's like you have a hard time hearing somebody else's story and feeling compassion and whatever when you're really focused internally on your own problems and really the self-pity. You know, you're just like stuck in it. And I felt like for a period of my life, I was really stuck in it.
Yeah.
It's like, and again, would I say that it was self-pity? No, I don't even like that term, but it was like self-pity and self-pity or resentment. Those words are really, they're a detriment to us, you know, because if we're stuck in that, we are stuck in selfishness. If we're stuck in the self-pity, like look at all the things that have happened in my life and why doesn't anything turn out the way that I hope? And it just seems like it's one. I used to say stuff like, I hate my life. Like internally.
Right.
I would say that internally, I hate my life.
Yeah.
And I think about, and I hear kids saying that sometimes, like teenagers, like, I hate my life. And I'm like, oh God, that's self-pity. It really is. You're stuck in this place where you can't think about the things that your blessings and you're thankful for. And that's why I think the list, a gratitude list, as we talked about earlier, it's like that can help you get out of that self-pity and get out of that place of like, man, I hate my life. I hate my life. I remember a time period, like they talk about self-talk, but just saying that over and over into my head. I hate my life. I hate my life. I hate my life. I hate my life, you know?
Yeah. Just playing in the background.
And playing that like it's almost like a recording or just a loop of, you know, and that is self-pity. It really is. And it's really difficult once you go down that road of self-pity to get out of it.
It's a really strong filter because a person, you know, other people can try to help you point out even the blessings that you have in your life, but that filter just vetoes it all. It turns everything, you know, into negativity. So you almost have to practice gratitude mechanically sometimes too, like like we were talking about with the meditation and the gratitudes, you know, pretty much a meditation in itself. And so when I started in recovery, I had this panda planner. It's kind of cool. But what I'd realized is that I had become so just scattered throughout the process of the complex PTSD that I had a hard time with my organizing. So I got this panda planner, which was pretty cool. But what I liked about it is at the beginning of every day, even on days where I didn't have anything going on in the outside world, you know, this is just my calendar and planner for my things to manage at home, for self-management. But every day I had to start the day with writing 3 things, you know, that I was grateful for. Right. And ending my day, you know, with a kind of memento of like, what was my highlight for today? You know, what was my great accomplishment for the day? And so that started my mechanical process, and it wasn't very heartfelt or connective because I was kind of in that same state. You know, I hate my life. I hated who I was. Even with the progress I had made, I still felt less than my potential, right? And kind of falling short. But after 6 months, you know, of mechanically doing the gratitude, I realized, oh, this isn't mechanical anymore. Like I'm getting deep with it, you know? I'm actually being grateful for values and things that are not material on the surface that I could see, but I'm grateful for things about my internal state of being. I'm grateful. So I don't really hate my life anymore. I'm kind of starting to feel grateful for where I'm at. I'm not doing this with my life or doing that with my life, but my way of being internally is really a lot better, And so the gratitude's important. I really recommend if you could just mechanically, if a person could just mechanically write down three things every morning,
You remind me of something. It's like what I've learned is that for me, willingness is the key to spirituality.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like being open, willing, vulnerable. All those words are kind of like, if you think about the willingness, like you've heard the Bible verse, seek and you shall find.
Right.
Well, the seek is the willingness, right?
Yes.
It's willing. Like God is always there. You have to be willing.
Yeah.
So I never there's a lot of terminology maybe in church where it sounded like basically God is distancing himself from me and I never believed that. It's like, I don't believe God's leaving me, but I felt distant from God. Right. And I believe that the words we're talking about, like self-pity, resentment, a lot of those, what they do is they cut yourself off from God, like being willing to God. Okay. It's not like God is leaving,
right?
But he's there, but you become unwilling the minute you start feeling resentful. You become unwilling the minute you start feeling self-pity.
Yeah.
Those words really cut you off, from God. And so the only way to feel connected again to God, the only way to feel spiritually connected, the only way to grow spiritually is to not be in that state of self-pity, resentment, those type of things.
That's right.
And it can feel like God is left. That God doesn't care. That God is disappointed. God hates us. God doesn't want anything to do with it. But really what it is that by us going into this cycle of resentment and self-pity, what we've done is cut ourselves off from God.
That's right.
And the only way to find him again, he's not far. And that's the greatest part about willingness. You hear of like faith the size of a mustard seed. The point is you don't need a lot of faith.
Right.
It's the object of your faith.
Right.
And really when you're doing like self-pity and resentment, the focus is selfishness. Okay. And then when you're not willing.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's what I've learned. And it's like, if you can get out of that selfishness or that self-pity, that resentment, then you become willing. And when you become willing, then God is right there.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Just like as close as your outlet.
Like for me that was a huge revelation for me to understand that.
Yes, me too.
Because I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm begging God to help me, begging God to help me figure it out, begging God to make things better. But really, and I'm like, and he's not answering and he's just silent and whatever. But what I was missing is that I was so stuck in my own self-pity and my own resentments or my own guilt or whatever.
Yeah.
And the guilt's another one.
Guilt is huge.
You know, the guilt, and I've said it many times that guilt is not from God.
Right.
Well, neither is self-pity.
Right.
And neither is resentment.
That's right.
None of those are from God.
Yeah.
And when you're stuck in those things, then you literally are cut off from God. You've cut yourself off from God.
You've disconnected.
You're not willing to even hear what he has to say.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's a neat printout I have. It's the 4 Ds of disconnection. And that's exactly the way I look at it with God now, is that he doesn't go away or puts distance between us. We actually are just in states of being that are disconnecting. And just like we can take an electronic and plug it into an outlet and be reconnected to that power, we can do that with God as well. It's as easy as getting into a more connective way of being. And we're reconnected that simply. So I think the 4 Ds of disconnection are like diagnosis, right? Judgment, diagnosing ourselves, and these labels, right, that we put on ourselves. Denial of responsibility is one of them. Oh gosh, I don't even know if I can remember them all, but they all start with, with D's, and it's the state of being we're in that's disconnected. Pride, fear, guilt, shame,
Fear is a big
grief,
one.
anger, apathy.
Yeah.
Fear is the number one disconnector.
Yeah.
The number one disconnector. Anytime I know that that I don't feel in connection, I feel disconnected from God, I'm definitely in a fear. I'm operating in fear.
Yeah.
I'm not trusting that God knows better than me. And it's amazing how we can experience over and over in life these proofs that God knows better than me. Like God, I couldn't have come up with a better scenario, right?
Yeah.
Than this. Still, we can get tripped on fear sometimes. So I think that was a huge disconnector for me.
I think that you brought up a great one that I didn't come to mind when I was saying that, because fear it's one of the same things that disconnects you from God. I can 100% agree. And I think so many of our relationships, the interactions are based on fear. They're not based on truth. They're based on fear.
Right.
And, and I'll take when I was listening to you, I'll take it one step further. It's not just the relationship with God that these things cut us off from. They actually cut us off from our closest relationships.
Yes.
Our relationship with everyday people, our kids, spouse, friends, family.
Yeah.
It's because if we're dealing with that relationship with fear, then we're cutting ourselves off from it. If that relationship is based on I'm fear they're going to find out about me, find out, how I really am, or, those type of things, that cuts us off from everyday relationships, not just God. And, there's no wonder that, God compares our relationship with him, the bride and the bridegroom it's the same thing. It's going to cut us off from our everyday relationships.
Yeah.
Those things will never be flourished. They'll never be real.
That's
They're
right.
never going to be like this connection.
We'll try to control it. We'll try to control the relationship, and somehow, some way, there'll be it won't be an authentic connection. Absolutely.
When I hear your story, and I wanted to kind of end with this, is that when I hear your story, and I've heard it a few times, and you've been on the podcast before, but one thing that comes to mind as I listen to you talk is that it seems to me that you were willing to do anything to get better.
That's right. And that's when I went into recovery at North Care in Oklahoma City, it was the first time I actually delved into a professional recovery setting for mental health. And they pulled some of us in a room, and they wanted to get surveys and know, why we thought that we were making such good progress in their facility. And my answer was because I, it's kind of like in recovery programs, I'm willing to go to any lengths to get better, whatever it takes. If I'm sleeping in my car and taking a bus, which I didn't have to do, but I was willing to do that. I was willing to do whatever it took to get to the places to get the help that I needed. It was the most important thing in my life. There were times before where I wanted to get better, but it needed to look like this or happen like this, or there was some sort of hang up in there. Well, if I can't get help around here, then this just kind of is what it is. And I was feeling stuck. But my life was on the line. The prognosis for bipolar 1 was early death, through some way or another. So I had to realize that, I'm in a life or death situation. And I was willing to do whatever it took, learn, whatever it took, face the truths of my dysfunction, was the big thing. I had to be willing not only to get better, but be willing to look at my side of the street and stay there, because I wanted to blame other people for my state of being. I wanted to be a victim.
Yeah.
And so so I had to want to get out of that feeling. It felt awful feeling like a victim. But I wanted to live and not just stay alive, not just cope. I wanted to feel alive.
Yeah.
So
I think that really that speaks to the foundation of our organization, Even One Less. It's like, are you willing to do anything to get better, to do things differently? Are you willing to, that's what I think that's the question we're asking people.
yeah,
And if they are, then we are willing to do anything in our power to help them.
right.
You know what I mean? But the willingness, back to when we're talking about the willingness, like, are you willing and open to God? Well, the same thing, are you willing and open to do whatever it takes to get better?
That's right.
Because I've said it and we've talked about it. It's like, I can't, you can't, we can't as an organization stop somebody from killing themselves if that's what they want to do.
Right.
We can't.
Right.
We're not in the business of stopping them from doing something they want to do. We're in a business of helping people get better if that's what they're willing to do and they want to do that. And that's like the most important thing to them.
Yeah.
And it's the avenue. Of course, part of the stuff we do is encourage them to want to get better, to
Sure.
help motivate those things. But it's like, that's really the basis of our organization, is that we want to help facilitate people who want to get better and are willing to do whatever it takes to get better, and offering them many choices. Because when I listen to your story, I hear that there was a dozen things that helped you.
Oh, more than a dozen.
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And from listening to my story, there was more than a dozen that helped me.
Right.
Not just one particular thing helped me. And so it's like, as we talked about yesterday, it's like we want to help as an organization connect the dots. Meaning that, counseling is exactly what I need.
Right.
But also, I might need the neurofeedback, or I might need, a support group like AA or NA, or, grieving support, or, that I might need, maybe just feel like prayer, and maybe, it just goes on and on. It's like, the tapping thing that we talked about, I bring it up a lot because I don't think people realize how important that, like, something simple as if you know a way to calm yourself during that loop.
Right.
And that loop is, self-pity or resentments that we've been talking about.
Fear.
If I can't, one of the hardest things, especially when you're in the middle of that, if you haven't practiced other things, is to get out of that loop.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I'm upset, like something has made me very upset. Like, I mean, I can say I prayed, I did all things, but it's very difficult to get out of that loop.
It is.
When you're upset.
Yes.
Like I'm there. And it seems like no matter what you do, you can't get out of that loop.
Right.
And I think that something like tapping is absolutely, it's like learning something different that could help in that situation.
Yeah.
It's one example, but of course we're talking about prayer, or it may be meditation, and learning to shut your brain off and like push it away, push out this thought away, push this thought. When you're having that loop of like, I hate myself, I hate my life, that being able to learn and practice when you're calm, learn to practice and do those things where you're pushing it away.
Right. Yeah.
So when it's the heat of the moment, you've practiced those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I had a client the other day, and the tapping is really important, right? For I call it hijacking the nervous system. When you're stuck in those loops, the tapping sequence can literally hijack that state of being. It's great because you don't have to use the mind, right? When your mental state is already kind of in this loop, you don't have to worry about switching thoughts or anything. But the tapping in itself, if you can learn it and memorize it, then it does the work without you having to do any mental work. But like this client was like, oh, shoot, I needed it in this one moment, but I forgot because she hadn't practiced it, in between. And so you make a really good point of when you're feeling well to practice, memorize these tools and things so that when they do come up, you can do that, and I recommend, there's no shame, I think, in taping up, PDFs, reminders, printing stuff out and having it right there handy helped me in my recovery, because when my mind is not in a well space, fumbling through my phone to find a file, that's not going to work out so well in this moment. It's much better if I could look on my refrigerator and just follow along, with the pictorial and do the tapping sequence mindlessly. And then within a matter of 2 to 3 minutes, I'm feeling a drastic reduction, a calming in my nervous system, so that I can get back to some state of, logic and my choice making. So you can get really elementary with it. There's no shame in that. If you got it printed,
and we've talked about like possibly walking, going on a walk.
Oh yeah.
Working out, running, it's not one thing that our organization is like really thinking about. It's the whole. It's
what like, works best for you?
What works? And, there's lots of people that like, if I go get in a good workout, that's going to make a difference.
Oh, for sure.
And so, but there's also times when you can't go work out. You can't do those
That's
things.
why you need that variety of skills and tools. That variety is important, because you're right. Everything isn't just going to work the same.
But I think that no matter what, it's like you have to get to this place where I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
That's right.
Or for me, like the realization that my life's just going to be like this. I'm either going to die feeling like this and being like this, or, my life's going to be crap.
Right.
Where I'm not happy, or am I willing to do whatever it takes to get better? And when you start getting outside of that and being willing and open to say, okay, what is going to help me be better? I think that you're in this place where you can make a paradigm shift, or you can make a shift in the way you think. And training your brain to think differently is so difficult, and it takes time.
It does take time. It's not an overnight process.
Right.
And that's why the willingness is important. The reality is really important too. I had this kind of idea like mental wellness looked like, I'm never going to have to face these adversities again. It was very unrealistic, and I was just so desperate to I just want an easy life. Yeah. I just want it easy. I was so, attached to ease versus resiliency. Yeah. Right. And so the willingness, came from, I'm willing to train. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to try to be resilient, to just try.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast. And I want to remind you guys, go to our website, evenoneless.com. Also, don't forget about our event. And, it's a mixer. It's an introduction event to our not-for-profit. It's going to be on September 16th at 6 p.m. in Elk City, Oklahoma, which is Western Oklahoma. You can go to our website. That event is on the website. You can also connect to our Facebook, which is Even One Less. I don't know. I assume you can find it for Even One Less.
Oh, yeah. Even One Less.
But we'd love for you guys to connect. And thank you guys very much for tuning in. And again, follow our podcast. Review it. Those things help. Share it with your friends. And hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Positively Undefeated. If there was something in this show that resonated with you, please share the show with your community. If you want this show delivered each Monday morning to your podcast app of choice, please subscribe or follow. And if you'd like to get a hold of Burl, please do so by going to burlstricker.com/contact.